us through the next hour and a half of learning and interaction. Please feel free to ask questions. If you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat. And I'd also like all of you to please introduce yourselves in the chat. Just tell us who you are and what you do. It's always nice, and there might be some networking opportunities. And so without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to Sean. Thanks, Sean.
Good morning. Ron, I'd like to introduce you, and then you can introduce the topic and me. So Ron is my coach. He's been my coach for more than 15 years at Cash Crusaders and even beyond. We now work together in connected leadership. So this talk we give is part of what we do. And just a bit of background on Ron. Ron is a top coach in South Africa. He's coached the MD of Pepsi. He's coached the COO of Woolworths. He has done a leadership training in a top 5 law firm. And he is also a lecturer at the Stellenbosch Business School. And a fun fact of Ron is that he was selected for the Guinness Book of Records for a lighting show that he had put on in the UK when he was still a very young man. So Ron has more than 30 years of coaching experience. I hand over to you, Ron.
Okay. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, it wasn't quite a lighting show, actually. It was an exhibition of holograms and lasers, which we did at the Science Museum. We had 250,000 people come to it. But anyway, let me introduce you, Sean. As Anton said, Sean is previously the CEO of Cash Crusaders. But and the reason I partnered with Sean is there's a lot of people talking about leadership and theorizing about leadership, but Sean's been there and done that. He sat in the CEO seat, and he 10x'd, increased profits at Cash Crusaders by tenfold. He took it from 650 million to 2.3 billion. The growth was 3 times the nearest competition. And also, whilst he was the CEO, they developed tech, some new tech that really changed the marketplace. We're going to be talking about that, actually, the story. As with most things in business, it's not as simple as it seems, and there's often some spills and thrills along the way. So we want to talk about that. And really, it's interesting, actually. I would talk to the guy that developed that tech yesterday, because I wanted to actually hear from Sean's people. Well, you know, it's fine to hear the story from Sean, and I'm kind of going, well, that's a good story, Sean. But when you actually hear it from the people, it sort of has a bit more reality. So I had a wonderful discussion with the tech developer yesterday about what it was like. I think what struck me about Sean, he was quite an assertive guy, but he very much had a human touch. And I think that's a key to leadership. But what we want to talk about today, one more. You've given me a fun fact about me. Let me return the favor, Sean. So Sean left Cash Crusaders as agreed. He had a certain tenure. He left. The business kind of did that. All the numbers went south. And then the chairman said, Sean, will you please come back, man? And his shares had become worth a lot less. And they said, well, look, we'll pay you out at what they were when the business was thriving. Come back on a year's contract and get the numbers back again. After 4 months, they said, actually, we're back in shape. And Sean muttered to me, he said, maybe I should reinvent myself as the turnaround expert. But I think what I take from that is, you know, he's led a business successfully and done it again. And actually, he's got a whole C-suite history of many, many years before Cash Crusaders. Okay, so let's get into this. And let's look at what we're saying here. We're saying think differently, lead differently. And, you know, so really what we're saying is partially leadership. Let's put it this way. It's an inner and outer journey. It's an inner journey in the sense that great leaders have a degree of self-awareness. They know how to lead themselves, if I can put it that way. They know how to manage themselves. And then there's an external piece. You know, there's some things they do differently in the world. And when I was talking to some of Sean's people, they talked about Seanisms, things that they remembered literally for years afterwards. So the inner and outer journey, and we want to explore that with you. What do we mean by the inner journey? And there's a model actually that is very powerful that we'd like to share with you. And we've found it actually quite transformational in our personal lives, in our business lives. And I think it's something that you could take away and use. That would be our hope. Next slide, please, Cheryl. Okay, so there's an old wizened man walking through the woods with his grandson. And we could hear the leaves crunching underfoot, and there's dappled sunlight coming through the canopy of trees. And there's a little boy there, the grandson, and he's maybe 5 or 6. And he's loving this walk and holding his grandpa's hand. And then he spots up in a tree, there's a pupa, and there's a butterfly he can see, well, struggling to emerge. And he says, "Grandpa, let's break it open. Let's release the butterfly." And the grandpa, who's a wise old guy, says, "No. It's got to struggle. If it doesn't struggle, it can't transform." And, you know, therein is a moral. If we want to grow, we need to be willing to struggle. Or put it another way, a way someone put it to me was, we discover our greatness by tackling the hard stuff. And, you know, I want to give you, as I say, we want to share a model with you. In a way, it can be explained very quickly. It's a few minutes. But to live this self-awareness stuff is a lifetime's journey. And I think leadership is a lifetime's journey. And that's what actually, for me, as a business coach, leadership coach, makes it endlessly fascinating. Endlessly fascinating. Next slide.
Ron, you've got a fun fact about struggle with your son. Do you want to share that?
Okay, yeah. So my son Leo, he's maybe go back a slide, Cheryl. So he's doing AI safety. You know, how do we contain this beast that we've created, this AI thing? And it's very challenging. So he's in his 20s, and he's in Sweden doing some very interesting projects. And I shared this story with him, and he said, you know, the arrogance of youth. He said, "Dad, have you got any other cliches?" I said, "What about no pain, no gain?" And we laughed. And I said, "But seriously, Leo, does this apply to you?" And he said, "Absolutely. Absolutely." And he said, "You know, I think most things that are worthwhile are not easy, but they're worth struggling with." Okay, next slide.
Yeah, Ron. So I just want to give them a bit more context to the story,
Yeah.
Ron, that
Yeah,
he
yeah.
is actually missing home and wanted to come back home. And yet it was his first time that he'd ever been away from home in Sweden. And you said to him that struggle is useful, and you used the butterfly analogy
That's
that
true.
allowed him to settle and say, "I can stay here and I'll push through." So that's
Yeah.
the rounding of that story. Okay, sure. Yeah, so this is Cash Crusaders, and as you can see, what I had at Cash Crusaders. There was a lot of struggle when I was there. It wasn't an easy journey, and I had to find my ability to lead at the next level, and that's where I used Ron quite extensively. Next, Cheryl. Next slide. So you can see here that this is all smiles, but beneath those smiles, it wasn't an easy journey. Next slide, Cheryl. What I encountered in Cash Crusaders, what I call the ABCs, and it's avoiding, blaming, and complaining. And when you see people avoiding, is they don't take on the hard work. They opt for getting the path of least resistance, doing the easy stuff, leaving the hard work, letting it fall in a crack. Then you get the blaming when people, when they do get caught out, they want to find out who can they blame so that they don't look bad. And then you get the third one, which is complaining, when people start to gossip about other people, when they look to see who else they can complain about so that the spotlight is less on them. Does this sound familiar in some of your companies? These were the cultures that I set about to get out of Cash Crusaders. Next slide, Joe.
Yeah, and Sean, if I could add to what you were saying, I think when we talked about it and you know, you were delighted to get that job, you know, after a little period of being, you know, on the benches. But then you were saying, I think I've got a challenge here because with that kind of culture, how are we going to have a real high performing business? So I think you could see that the challenge was right there.
Yeah. And you can see that when you have a blame culture, you basically, you got finger pointing that goes all down the scale. And what I looked at when I was in Cash Crusaders was I had to say to myself, if we want to challenge the competition and do better than the competition, then you have to be able to make new mistakes. And the only way people are going to step out of that zone where they feel they got to protect themselves and be blaming others is if you can have them encouraged to be able to make new mistakes. That then takes the blame out the game.
So Sean, that's new mistakes on the way to success. Yeah. It's not just
Yeah.
about.
No, if people are making the same mistakes, I used to have a saying that said, I wanted people to be committed to making new mistakes only. Because if you're committed to making the same mistakes, if you make a mistake once, that's an experience. If you make that same mistake twice, it's a choice. If you make the same mistake a third time, you actually committed to making that mistake. And that's not the type of mistakes you want. You want new mistakes.
Yes. Yes.
So when people would complain to me, that it's the chestnut in companies is people look for diversions, and we see it today in politics with you see it in America with Donald Trump, where they put Jeffrey Epstein's files up, and he'll go, well, let me complain about Obama, because it's a way of deflecting things from yourself. You can move it to somebody else. And what I wanted people to do was, don't bring me your complaints. Bring me suggestions, and don't bring me just one suggestion, bring me two suggestions. Ron, do you want to ask me something there on that?
But yeah, no, what's the logic? Why two suggestions?
So what happens is when someone brings you one suggestion, it's their hobby horse, and they're going to bring you the thing that they would like you to send you down a certain trajectory or down a certain path. If you ask someone to bring you two suggestions for the same problem, they actually start to look at it from another angle, and you might get a more rational outlook on that instead of just their hobby horse suggestion
Yeah.
that they were trying to throw at you.
Yeah. So you're pushing their thinking. Yeah.
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 Next slide. Cheryl, next slide.
No, I think, okay. Yeah. Okay. So we thought, okay, what distinguishes effective, highly effective, high performance, successful individuals from less effective? And I'm going to suggest that it's mindset, that we have a different internal dialogue. And people in a victim mindset ask themselves certain types of questions. Let me not over-explain. Can we jump into this, Sean, and maybe work with a real issue?
Yeah, let's give it to them, Ron. Let's show them how
Okay.
this works in action.
So Sean, have you got something real that's challenging you, either personally or business wise, right now that we could? I'll do a little bit of coaching with you.
Yeah, Ron, so you will know that I am recently divorced and
Yep.
that it's been a struggle to get access to my 14-year-old son. It's been more than a year that we have been estranged.
Okay. So are you willing to explore it? I mean, in front of quite a number of people, is that okay with you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to ask you some questions. So what's the problem here?
I don't see my kid. And as a father, you would, when a kid's young, in his growing
Yeah.
years, I want to
Okay.
experience all those firsts with him, and have him as close to me as I could.
Okay. And what's your worst experience with this problem?
Just imagining that if I don't connect with him now, he's going to be out of school and an adult before he understands that, what all the dynamics were, and then I've lost him.
Yeah. So you've got a window to
Yeah.
connect with it, and you don't want to miss that window. So what's lacking in you to resolve this?
So there's a part of me that expects that my child, because I'm his biological father, that he should just have a relationship with me and that I'm his parent.
Hmm. So
And
there's an expectation.
yeah, there's an expectation. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And what do you see as the main obstacle to moving forward with it?
So his mom and I are not on good speaking terms, and for lack of a better word, the well has been poisoned.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Next, Cheryl. Okay, so let's ask some different questions. So we had, if you like, problem-focused mindset. Let's look at the creator or solution-focused mindset. Sean, what do you really want here? What do you ideally want?
I'd want to see my kid regularly, and I'd want to have him as part of my life.
Okay, okay. And what's a similar situation that you've resolved before that could give you confidence? Hey, I've done something like this before.
Ah, Ron, I'm a serial D4C.
Oh, no.
I have
All
a
right.
24-year-old from my first marriage, and
Yeah.
I have a fantastic relationship with him.
Okay.
And I really worked it, to have that relationship with him. So
Fantastic.
I'm in my second rodeo here.
Okay, so you know you can do this. You know you
Yeah.
can do this. And what strengths and resources do you have that can help you solve this?
So I have you as my coach, and obviously we speak every week. That's or
Mhm.
twice a week,
Yeah.
and then I also went and sought my own therapist because these are people that have a professional view on things and have seen these things play out before and
Yeah.
can guide me.
Okay. Well, good for you for reaching out. And um, what's a step that you can take, however small, to progress this?
Yeah, so I pushed I used my eldest son as sort of the decoy to get my younger son to spend Father's Day with me. And
Okay.
that was a catalyst
Okay.
for
Yeah.
him to spend more time with me. And
Yeah.
then I used the father of his best friend to do a
Yeah.
sleep just this past Friday, which was the first time that he'd slept over with me in
Beautiful.
more than a
Beautiful.
year. And so there are small steps that are being taken,
Yeah.
and the ice has been broken.
Beautiful. And Sean, I think you won't mind me sharing the delight in your voice when you took these small steps and started to see things rebuilding was, for me, as your coach, was so delightful. And also, Sean, I think it takes considerable courage to share this and vulnerability. And I think the reason I would underline that, I think modern leadership, the little gray man version, the person who's focused just on the numbers and the quarterly results, I think we've gone past that now. We want to be led by human beings who've got courage, a beating heart, and are vulnerable. So I appreciate that. And when I spoke to your people, that's exactly what I got from them. This guy's human. He didn't put himself on a pedestal. And I think there's a lesson for all of us in a leadership position.
And Ron, to credit you is because we do this work around the drama triangle, and I was having these challenges with my kid, you asked me about where in the drama triangle I'm sitting and how could I move from victim to creator. So you had a very integral part in making me see that this is not just about business, that you need to have that leadership, is you need to have it in your personal life and step out of that drama triangle. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Next slide, Cheryl. So Sean's slightly given the game away. Yes, it's a model called the drama triangle, and we want to build it up in pieces so that this all makes sense. It's developed by a guy called Dr. Stephen Karpman in the 60s, actually. So that's interesting. It's a model that's been around, more than 60 years. And I think it contains an intrinsic wisdom. And I think that's why it's been so long lasting. And I know I'm talking about it and we haven't quite shown you the model, but we'll get there. But let me just build up the story. So what are we saying here? And what have we just modeled? Well, as a victim, the world happens to me. The world comes crashing in on me. And another way of putting it is the locus of control is not within me, it's outside of me. It's happening to me. And the arrows are pointing in on me, and I'm in the role of victim. Okay, next. Oh, yeah, I just wanted to speak to this incredible guy, Viktor Frankl, who found himself in the concentration camps. And what he said, and he was in a situation where everything had been taken from him, except one thing, which was his ability to choose how he saw that situation. And just to, read what he's saying, when we're no longer able to change a situation, and it looks like, hey, what could I be but a victim? We're challenged to change ourselves. And, he wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning, absolutely wonderful seminal text on how we create meaning as humans. Next slide. So here's the challenge for all of us. And it links to what Sean was saying about the ABCs. So as a victim, I go, it's not me, it's them. I blame them. It's not about me, and if my people aren't performing, well, people aren't very good, are they? What's it got to do with me? But we need to make a shift as great leaders. And whether it's with our son in our personal life or our sports or our musical instruments or our business, this is the essential shift. Can I be the creator in my life? Next, just move on one, Cheryl. So then instead of life happening to me, life happens by me. And the locus of control, instead of being outside of me and crashing in on me, is within me, and I'm making it happen out into the world. So that's, and notice the arrow, the shift, and that is the choice. Viktor Frankl talks about, in a way, the choice to be at cause of our circumstances. And how can we notice when we're blaming and complaining, and how do we shift into making what we want happen in our world? Next.
So Ron,
Okay.
this is
Sure.
the story of Joe. So Joe is an interesting character. I was looking for a computer programmer. Our team was expanding. We had written our own point of sale system, and I was scaling up the team. And one day I was chatting to my chairman. I said, I'm recruiting for some computer programmers, and he said, why don't you use this guy Joe? I said, who's Joe? He says, he's my dive instructor. I said, sorry, I'm looking for a programmer, not a dive instructor. He says, no, he's worked on computers before. Interview him. So I interviewed Joe. And, we were using a Microsoft language to program in, and he'd used some weird, obscure language to program in, but like some years ago. And I said to him, Joe, there's a test you've got to take to be able to become a programmer with us. You don't program in Microsoft's language. How are you going to pass the test? And he said, give me 30 days. I'll go and study up on that and I'll come back. And if I pass the test, would you give me the job? I said, sure, if you want to go and study up. 30 days later, he came back, wrote the test and passed. So I hired him as a programmer. And he became our IT manager. And then years passed on, and we now went into COVID. And everyone for 66 days had to go and take a long break. And the only time that you were doing anything was when you were sitting on a Sunday night in front of your TV watching a family meeting with the president of the country. And after 66 days, we came back to work. And in this time, I had realized that we needed to have a stronger online presence because our business model was very much a brick and mortar. We sell secondhand product, we sell new goods, but we knew that our secondhand products were going to be in demand. And the only way that we were able to then beat the competition now would be to have this online presence. So we got back to work after 66 days, and I said to Joe, will you go and write this code? And he came back on, and he was at work, and he said, look, we need another 2 weeks to finish the code off, but we should be good to go to have this online presence. Now, what was integral in this online application and what made it tricky is that in a second-hand market, you only have one of those items on your shelf. So if you had two people that bought that item at exactly the same time and paid their money at exactly the same time, one person's going to get the item, but two people have paid for it. And now you're going to have one unhappy customer and you've got one happy customer. So we had to pause until we could get the replication so synced that only one person would be able to get that item. Well, I'm driving on the highway. It's 2 weeks out, and we meant to go live with this. And I told all my franchisees that we would be trading by the end of the month. And remember now that we have closed 2 stores during lockdown. So there was a lot of pressure on many of the franchisees because people had to pay staff salaries, they had to pay landlords, and they weren't trading. So this was a very, very precarious time. And that online trading was very important for us to keep our heads in the game.
Just, Cheryl, move the slide one along, please. Speak to this, Sean.
So we get to the office, and Ibrahim Patel, as we arrived, the 2 days after we had just arrived back at the office, Ibrahim Patel says, no other retailers can trade excepting for online retailers. You could have your staff come back to your stores, but they couldn't open their doors for anybody because the country was going through various waves of COVID, and Mr. Patel had decided that no one can trade unless you're an online trader. So Joe then phones me frantically on this 2 weeks out before we were meant to go live and says to me, the system doesn't work. It just crashes. The code is broken. It doesn't work. He was destitute. He said, I feel such a failure. And I said to him, no, Joe, that's not how this works. There's errors that are in the code that we need to find out how to fix. What you need to do is firstly, I went and sat down with Ron because I thought, oh, wow, this is really bad for us. We're not trading. I've told the franchisees we're going to trade. Joe's just told me that this code is broken. He doesn't know how to fix it. I put a call to Ron. I said, Ron, I need to have a session with you. Do you remember that session, Ron?
Indeed, very well. Yeah.
So I sit with Ron, and Ron says to me, Sean, I need you to get out of victim mode, and I need you to get into creative. And he said, who's being persecuted here? I said, well, the chairman's on my case because he's saying that who can we blame for this? And Joe is feeling very insecure in himself. He's worried that he's going to lose his job. I'm defending him. I said to him that I've got your back. I told the chairman, if there's anyone to blame, it's me. And then Ron said, and why are you so attached to how this thing's played out? I said, well, I told the franchisees that we'd be trading within another 2 weeks, and we're not. And he said, do you think that was a bit of hero stuff on your part, that you were trying to like look like the good guy and the hero, and now you got to go back to your franchisees and give them the reality check? And I said, yeah, that's I suppose what it is I have to now understand that I've got to go back. So I went back to Joe first and I said, Joe, can you get all the programmers in a room and brainstorm this out and understand exactly what the fault is and rewrite the code? And I said, just go and understand that there's no pressure on you guys. No one's going to lose their jobs. I've got your backs. I've gone back to the franchisees. I've told them that this thing is going to take longer. We just need to hold the fort here. We need to hold the line.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Okay, so Sean, let me do a little diversion into theory, and then we'll come and then to finish the story. Yeah. So, yeah, we're talking about what's Stephen Cartman's drama triangle, and we talked about the situation with Sean and his son. That was the victim part of the triangle. So you see that it's got three elements. It's got victim, villain, and hero. And so the victim, the world happens, it's being done to me, it's not fair. Ibrahim Patel shouldn't have said that. How can they close the store and tell us we can go into the store, but the customers can't? It's, the world's not fair. And then I think what you were saying, Sean, the potential, the villain, or sometimes called the persecutor, when Joe failed or looked like he was about to fail, the risks of being attacked and blamed were considerable. And people saying, whose fault? Why has it all gone wrong? And we've got hundreds of your employees waiting for the stores to open, and their dependents. I'm thinking thousands of people now. And I think very honest of you, Sean. Maybe you were a little bit wanting to be the hero and making a promise that was frankly a little bit hard to keep. But let's move on one, Cheryl. Okay, so there's a little bit more to the drama triangle. And Dr. Cartman talked about the shift to the empowerment triangle. The drama triangle is essentially fear-based. The whole thing's fear-based. It's fear and proving. The empowerment triangle is a more healthy dynamic. So Sean said, look, I'll protect you from the criticism of the chairman. But he also challenged Joe. Joe, how much time do you really need? And you asked Joe, didn't you, to draw people. You had programmers in India.
Correct.
And you said, look, you need to get the team back together and make a plan. How long do you need? What can I now communicate? So that wasn't moving out of hero to really challenging and coaching and not panicking. Easy to blame somebody and have a scapegoat, but that would be leaving yourself in the left-hand side of the drama triangle. So this is the positive. And in life, there is a place for healthy challenge, particularly in business. You need to set boundaries. You need to demand certain performance and certain behaviors. And actually, I was talking to Joe yesterday, and he was talking about how in his life he's had to find that assertive voice, the challenger. And again, I'd come back to making shift happen. A little play on words there, but the awareness piece. I talked right at the beginning about the inner journey. It's to be aware of when we're falling into one pattern and when we need to move in another. And it's almost like there's a part of ourselves. Sometimes that people call it the observing eye, the part of ourselves that watches ourselves and said, Sean, Ron, whoever you are, I think you're in that fear domain. You're in victim, hero, and villain, and that's not really going to work very well. How do you shift? So that's the question. So Sean, let's go back to the story. What happened?
So next slide, Cheryl. So we got the code working within the next 2 weeks. Joe got the code working, we tested it, we went live, and we were the first to launch something called Click and Collect in South Africa. So we went live with a national TV campaign, plowed a lot of money into the marketing then, and were able to serve our customers again in spite of any of the covert, regulations. And that energized all the franchisees, and it was a rallying call for the business to catapult itself back into good trade.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Sean. It's a great story. I remember there was one more thing I said to you at the time, Sean. I said, this is a piece of visible leadership. The way that you deal with this, people are watching. Because if you go into blame, they go, okay, well, that's how we do things around here. Things go wrong, we attack people. But you didn't. And also talking to Joe, he said to me, I was sure I was going to be sacked. I was so sure. And Sean was calm. He said, I couldn't believe it. Anyway, so that's beautiful
Yeah.
story. Okay.
And Ron, just a point on that is that in your weakest moments, what you think are your weakest moments is where your strength will really come from. And people are watching you to see that you walk your talk. As a leader at the top, when you say, if you make a mistake and it's a new mistake, I'll back you. If you don't do that, it's such a dangerous place for leaders. And that is where you've got to back yourself always. And you've got to be able to hold the line. If you don't do
Yeah.
that, it's lip service and people will
Yes.
out you.
Yes. Very good. Okay. So next slide. So, folks, you've listened, I hope, very patiently, but I think it's time for you to talk. So these ideas, these models, they start to make sense when you work them and you relate them to your experience. So we're going to have a 10-minute breakout. We're going to put you in threes. Can we do that, Cheryl? Yep. And here's the question. Introduce yourselves. You may or may not know your colleagues on this call. What's your name? A little bit about your business and role, but don't make too much of a meal of that because we've only got 10 minutes. But here, let's get into the meat of it. What are some of your leadership challenges? And I'm going to invite you to, what insights from this masterclass may help? Okay. Okay, over to you. So Cheryl, can you set up the rooms? And I'm thinking, can we post the questions or the slide in chat? Or one more thing you could do is just get your phone, which hopefully is sitting there on silent. Just take a picture of this slide. Those are your questions. Okay, Cheryl. And we're not recording this piece. Are they going into breakouts now, Cheryl?
Yeah, I can see it.
Good, good, good.
I think that's all.
Okay. Okay. Everyone in breakout, Cheryl?
There's some who haven't joined breakout rooms, so I'm just trying to sort that out.
Okay. Okay.
I did type the questions into the chat.
Oh, wonderful. That's good.
Ron, do you want to put yourself on mute, and we do a quick phone call?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, yeah. Excuse us just a sec. Any
How did-
comments, colleagues?
Yeah.
Anything we need to be aware of? No. Okay.
How's it going for you, Andrea?
Hi, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can hear you.
No, I've always found it very interesting.
Good, good, good.
I must say the dynamic between the two of you is better than the last time when I.
Ah, that's good.
We did just comment on that. The interplay between us, because we now are so used to the material, Andrea, we actually more intertwined. I'm glad you
Yeah,
picked up on that. Yeah.
it makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Mm.
Good
Cheryl,
point.
I'm seeing 14 participants. Is that AI? Not sure what to make of that.
I'll tell you what it is. Chad Williams hasn't joined his group.
Right.
So that's one. So yes, there are 9, which means 5 co-hosts, 4 note takers. So that's 9.
Right.
Then Chad Williams hasn't joined. Rochelle hasn't joined.
Okay.
Mary of White Flag Coaching hasn't joined the breakout
Okay.
room.
Uh-huh.
And Michelle Lewis hasn't joined a breakout
Okay.
room. And Uli Temba hasn't joined a breakout
Okay.
room.
And do we have
So,
some pairs rather than threes, or what have we got?
3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. So mostly threes and 1, 2.
Okay, that's good. And I see that Raymond and Lovu. Oh, yeah. Okay, good.
Okay.
Oh, what are
let's
we going to
just
do with
check.
somebody that's just joined, Cheryl? We've got 5 minutes by my calculation.
Yes, we've got 5 minutes. Can I let them know they've got 5 minutes left?
Yes, that's a good idea. The trouble with putting somebody who's just joined the meeting into a breakout is they don't know what the hell's going on, do they?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
maybe just let them wait. Do you want to? I don't know if we need to. Can we somehow let somebody know that they're in breakouts and the session resumes in 5 minutes?
We can send them a message.
I'm going to grab a tea whilst that's happening. Nicole, any comments from you or any feedback?
Ron, now might not be the time.
It might not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're about to move back into the set. We'll pick it up later. So I think Anton went into a breakout actually.
Yes, he did.
Yes, that's good.
Oh, there was.
He's actually part of the pair.
Okay, well, that's good.
Out of
That's good.
interest, even though it was random.
Okay.
There's a Michelle Lewis that just sent me a private message here. I don't
Oh, yeah.
know her. She says, "Thank you for being a kind leader, Sean. I worked at Cash Crusaders at the tail end just before you left."
Oh, beautiful.
I don't know who Michelle Lewis is. That's the embarrassing part.
How many staff did you have, Sean? I don't think you can be expected to know everyone.
When I left, there's about 1,300.
And you didn't know them all by name, Sean? Come on,
Of
man.
course not. Yeah, yeah. There were three that I didn't know. Michelle Lewis was one.
Yeah, of course. Okay. So, Cheryl, do you let them know the room is closing in?
Yes, it's going to close. So by my time, it's in 15 seconds. I will press close, and then it's 60 seconds to bring them all back in.
Right.
Some come in zooming faster than others.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to move on to the next slide? Or leave it at this slide?
You can leave it at that for just for a second when they're coming
They're
back.
going to discuss, right? They're going to discuss now.
Sean, that'll be in the Q&A. So I'm going to ask them
Okay.
to hold their questions. And there's a couple more things I want to say, and then we'll get into Q&A.
Right.
I can see somebody in room 4 who I think used to teach my son's maths. Farrell. So they're coming back. Yeah, Cheryl? Cheryl, can you just let us know when we can proceed?
They are all back, Ron.
Okay, good. Well, in that case. So folks, I'm very curious about your discussions. And we do actually want to open this up to Q&A and dialogue. So if you've got any questions or an insight, maybe make a note or just hold it for a beat and we're going to come back to you. But before we do that, I want to say a few more things. Cheryl, next, please, next slide. So what's the big idea here, really? Well, the first one, the cardinal principle is personal responsibility, which is absolutely core to leadership. So it's about claiming your piece, owning your piece in a situation before you rush to blame others, because that's the piece you can do something about most easily yourself. The second thing is then it's almost like, where are you on this map? We gave you the drama triangle map. There's various models and frameworks out there, but to place yourself, where am I? Am I in victim or creator? And then the next step, so that the second step is the awareness step. And then the third step is the choice to move into action. So what's the shift I need to make from drama to empowerment? And I'll just say a little bit more, but, there are payoffs. Why do we blame? We want to be right. Humans want to be right about their view of the world. But there's a wonderful expression actually in couples therapy, which goes like this: do you want to be right or do you want to be married? Now, I know business is not a marriage, but the same principle applies. As a leader, we need to have humility and not be too attached to my way is the only way. So that's the big idea: personal responsibility, self-awareness, and making a shift if needs be. Next slide. Okay, so we spent whatever it is, 45 minutes, an hour, going through some of these ideas. But, you know, concepts, sort of intellectual concepts, all very well. They don't really, they make some difference. I'm hoping it's useful. But to really make shift, we need to immerse ourselves in these ideas and apply them in real situations and then reflect. There's a whole learning process. So if you want to take this a bit further, we have got a masterclass series starting on August the 20th. We've costed it 5,500 Rand. Or if you were interested in a bespoke program or various others, there's a feedback form at the end to see if you want to take this a bit further. And so we got 5 workshops. I don't think I'll go into all the detail, but it's very interesting stuff. And it's that mixture again of the inner, the mindset work, and the outer, applying things in the real world in your businesses. Next. Couple more thoughts. First thought, if man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. In other words, if you don't know where you're going, nothing's really going to help you. But if you have a goal, it's interesting, we start to see the information and the opportunities that help us get to the goal. And, you know, so part of what we would do if you join the series is start with visioning and goal setting. Very powerful. Next. Thanks. So the other thing, you know, with leadership development, and I think the whole, you know, whole ORT idea is to create a community. We don't have to do these things alone, and nor should we. And I love this African proverb. If you want to walk fast, walk alone. If you want to walk far, walk together. That's the ORT philosophy, and we completely agree. And if you want to join us, that would be fantastic. Next slide. Oh, thanks, folks. Got some lovely thumbs up coming through. Okay, we'd love some feedback. Then let's get into Q&A. But we'd love some feedback, what you want as next steps, what you took from this. Very helpful for us. So can we take, I think there's 4 questions, aren't they, Andrew? It's not a big feedback form, but why don't we take 3 minutes, whatever. Point your phone at this. You'll get a QR code. It'll take you into a feedback form. And please, let's just do that. Then we want to get into Q&A. And when you've completed it, I wonder, let's see, can we see a raised hand, Cheryl? Is there a way of seeing? Yeah, so on the bottom of your Zoom page should be reactions. And then there's, what have we got? We could do a raised hand. I've just put up a raised hand. And so Cheryl. So when you've done your feedback, can you put up a raised hand? Thanks, Avril. Yeah, good. Okay, I think whilst people are doing that, next. Okay, so basically, let's throw this open. I wonder actually, Cheryl, we don't really need the slide anymore. Maybe we could just see folks. But there we are, spotlighted. Hello, Sean.
Ron, how are you?
Okay, love to get some questions from people or observations, and maybe put your comment in chat, or you can raise a hand. But let's throw this open. Love to know what came out of this for you. Who would like?
I think Avril's up.
We've got a slight confusion about, are they raising their hands because they finished the feedback form, or do they want to share something? If you can come off. Let's see. How are we going to do this, show? Come on.
I'm happy to give you some feedback.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was just saying in this little breakaway group, firstly, thank you very
Yes,
much.
Anna.
Well done. What really stood out for me is I've always said to people that we need to approach a problem with more than one solution, but I've never actually known why I've said that. And the reason I did it was because I had a manager once that said that don't come to me with a problem, come to me with at least 3 solutions. But I understand now that first problem, that first solution probably is something that it has a hidden agenda or speaks more to one's own comfort zone. And if you have more than that, it speaks to your critical thinking and thinking outside the box. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. The first answer is probably almost you on automatic, isn't it? And the second, it's like, oh gosh, let me think about that. Oh, yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Sonia. Who else has got a question or a comment?
I've got a comment, Ron.
Yeah, Anton.
I think for me, the sort of general theme of accountability was really powerful. You know, it's so easy to feel like people are doing things to you, or there's decisions that are made that are not in your best interests, and then you kind of look at them in a very narrow frame of reference. Whereas if you just paused for a moment and looked at the bigger picture, I think you'd often realize that it's not personal, it's not something that's designed to hamstring you specifically, but that maybe it's a business decision, or there's other factors at play. And I suppose maybe my question would be, when you find yourself slipping into that woe is me, like they don't appreciate my value or whatever, that mindset, what tools or techniques can one use to just pull yourself out of that?
That's a great question, Anton. Let me tell you a story, and then I want to give you a device. So as I was saying, I did actually speak to Joe yesterday, as it happens. And he said, look, he's now left Cash Crusaders, he's now become, fairly senior manager. And he said, it's an interesting situation I came across. So somebody felt that people were joking at his expense in this team. And what Joe said to this guy was, you do know, in that team, they kind of rib each other a bit when you've become part of the in crowd. So I know that you're thinking they're laughing at you, but actually they're laughing with you. And it's like, oh, are they? Yeah. And it's almost like we have a narrative, and is the narrative helpful or not? And is it right or not? And we talked about the inner journey. I think to start to, how can I put it? Don't believe everything you think. Don't believe everything you think, I think is a very useful guideline. And so then I said there's going to be a principle. And here's the principle. There's the fact and there's the story. And we need to know in any situation, what actually are the facts? What would a video camera record? That's the fact. Then there's another piece. What's the story I'm making about the facts? And just in your head to go, what's my interpretation? Is there another interpretation? There might even be an opposite interpretation. So I'm arguing with somebody, to even ask yourself, I know I'm busy being right, but what might be the germ of truth in what they're saying? Sorry, Anton, I feel like I'm giving you a lecture, but I hope it's helpful. I like this principle of the fact and the story. I think that's a very simple way of capturing a very fundamental truth.
And
No, that's very useful. Thanks. Yeah, Sean, go ahead.
Saying that I used to use at Cash Crusaders to my team would be, check your ego at the door.
You've said that to me, yeah.
Avril, you've got a question.
I think, Avril, or your hand was just up and you haven't taken it down.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so I don't know, I feel like my company is a little bit of a different situation. We are a very small local manufacturing concern, a new company that was born during COVID. And I think that's what happens is that we have absolutely no destination. We don't have a goal. We are too focused on cash turnover and paying SARS. So there's nothing, there's no story, there's no there's no goal setting. So that was my takeaway.
Sure, and I'd love to know your view on that. You're being very tactfully silent.
Yeah, you know, Avril, there's a saying that says not having a strategy is a strategy.
No strategy. There's no strategy. Yeah.
So what you're saying is your takeout is that you want more goal setting in your organization, and that's going to lead you to outcomes that you're looking for. Is that what your takeout is of this?
I think that every company should have they should have a goal or they should have a journey. They must know what their journey is, instead of just surviving.
It's interesting. Someone's asked the question in the chat. They said they wanted to ask this question of me, and maybe it'll feed into your question, is looking back, what mindset shift or belief about money, people helped you scale your business beyond just survival into real growth?
Yeah,
so,
that's it.
Yeah, so that was a question that's been asked to me in the chat. So it's interesting that you ask a similar question. And I'll answer what I did in Cash Crusaders. And it was quite interesting is that when I joined Cash Crusaders, I believe people buy visions more than and stories more than they buy, like, you know, we in here for profit, or we want to make this amount of money. And what I said is, when I joined the company, I said to them, you know, we could reframe this business from being a franchise business using technology to being a technology business doing franchising. And they went, what do you mean? I said, well, you've got all these products that are unique. And if we could have a way that we could build a point of sale system and an inventory system that would tell us, you know, what the input price was, what we sold it for, how long it took to sell, you could then work out per unique item that we've got. So like an iPhone 15 or an iPhone 13, you could say, if that sold, if it held its price for longer, you could look at what the features of that thing are and go back to that phone manufacturer or a fridge or a microwave, whatever manufacturer, say, you know, these particular features make this product hold its value better because we buy and sell those secondhand products and we know it held its value. And then we could go and sell data back to manufacturers and say, put these features in and you got a better product. So I look to reframe the business from the conventional business we're doing to what could we be doing. And maybe that's something you could look at in your own company, is Avril, is what could you be doing differently that moves the needle and makes you more money that you're not thinking about today. So it's thinking beyond the box as opposed to just in the box you're in.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a manufacturer, it's a little bit more difficult because we don't have, we've got a turnover time of 4 weeks. So we're not just selling things off the shelf. And this is the problem. But I can look at that as well. We can try and maybe find some items that are, we can maybe small items, bread and butter line or something like that. Probably.
Good.
I see
Thanks.
Bev has a hand up. Bev, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, I do. I'll just put my camera on. So yeah, more of an observation in terms of what stood out for me was that analogy to focusing on the solution as opposed to the problem. But then what came up in our breakaway was communication as a leadership, you know, an issue with leadership. And I think effective communication is often the thing that can bridge that gap. So my question is, have you got any golden nuggets or takeaways in terms of sort of implementing those communication strategies within your organization? Not just the communication, but also in terms of the active listening of the people within the organization. Because I often find when we have sessions, the first thing that comes up as a weakness is always communication. And as much as you are trying your best to communicate adequately, there's always someone or member of a team who is not on the same page. So have you got any golden nuggets regarding that?
Yeah. So I can just tell you about in Cash Crusaders, and then Ron, maybe you can just comment, is so one of the things that I introduced in Cash Crusaders, and it wasn't a term, Ron actually used the term later on, it's called coach-like leadership. And what coaching does is it allows you to ask pertinent questions in an open-minded way without being, preempting the answer. And invariably when people want to communicate, what they're actually saying is, I want my voice to be heard. They don't communicate to listen, they communicate to speak back. And in coaching, you ask questions. You don't jump in and give the answer. So when I trained my team, it was training them to have coach-like leadership, and that invariably makes their communication better.
That's great, Sean. And one piece of coach-like leadership, just a little device. It's so simple that it may not sound exactly earth-shattering, but I found it terribly effective, is to say, what I'm hearing is, and then mirror back. Incredibly simple device. What I'm hearing, okay, so what I'm hearing you say, and summarize and use their words, not different words. Then they go, oh, they haven't really got me. Use their words, play it back, and then what they can, and sometimes you might even add, have I got it? And they might say, well, most of it, thank you. But there's one piece you've missed, which is really important. Aha. So that almost creates what you call, sometimes it's called a cycle of communication. They say something, I reflect back, they check back to me. That's a complete cycle of communication. But the device is, what I'm hearing is, and reflect back. Very simple, but surprisingly powerful.
And Bev, one other thing that you can do if you want to bring communication more into your company is have a morning check-in. In tech companies, they have what they call stand-ups. So if you're in tech, most tech today, what is the language? I forget what they call it now. But you basically are standing up and you sketch the problem you've got, and that other people are around, and they feed that problem back to you, so that there's an understanding of what it is, and those kind of things help with that, with getting communication going.
I'd love to, Jamie. Thanks, Sean. Jamie.
Hi. First,
Hello.
thank you, Sean, Ron. Very, very insightful session. Super, super powerful. I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me were the ABCs, and just because it's resonating quite strongly with a kind of culture that I'm seeing currently with a client. Specifically the blame side of things, right? And you said something so important about almost cutting off that blame at the source, right? Creating a culture of psychological safety. And I'm wondering, so in addition to that, specifically what I've seen is kind of a competition culture, right? And I'm wondering how best we can start to shift from the competition to the collaboration side, from the victim to the creator side of things as well, at a more systemic or organizational level. And if you have any insights around that.
I've got thoughts. I'm sure you have as well, Sean.
So in business, I suppose, as in life, but more in business, is politics is a natural part of business. And when I looked at the ABCs, actually what that does is it starts to debunk the politics, and it takes the competitiveness away, and you look to then how do we collaborate, because people are competing for positions. If you've got two people and they're in the same kind of rank, and there's a position that's coming above, you got to know that there's competition. What you want is healthy competition, not unhealthy competition. Healthy competition is good, because you want to have a meritocracy. You want the cream's got to rise to the top. So you want the best people to be moving ahead, but it can't be at the expense of others. So what you're looking for in that unhealthy competition is people gossiping about the other, complaining about the other, trying to put blame on someone where they don't take responsibility. That's when it's unhealthy. So look for the ABCs and you will see that unhealthy competitiveness will dissipate.
Yeah, that's great. Let me add a couple more things. So Jamie, I think, thank you for picking up the ABCs. And what I found when I speak to people at Cash Crusaders, they talk about Seanisms. And initially, I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. But sometimes having something like the ABCs, it creates a language. It sort of heightens awareness. Oh, we're dropping into the ABCs, you know. And these little phrases, which initially I thought, oh, it's a bit gimmicky, but they help to lodge ideas in people's heads. They're actually incredibly helpful. So you create a little bit of an in language. You talked about, you know, creating a culture. I think the other thing I would say is leaders, and particularly senior leaders' behavior. You know, they talk about the fish. Have you heard the expression, the fish rots from the head? When you've got dysfunctional behavior at the top, it spreads all the way down. And when you've got functional behavior and people see that, again, it has a huge impact. So when I was talking to Joe, it's fresh in my mind because I spoke to him yesterday, but he was saying, you know, with Sean, if he had a problem, I mean, Sean was the CEO and he was the tech guy, but he said there was no sense of hierarchy. And he said, but later, after Sean left, you know, he would talk to senior people and they said, you know, don't bring in the junior person. Kind of like, what do they know? You know, you should have all the answers. So it's just a very different, I think, you know, it starts with the mindset of the senior leader and it comes out in behavior and it's what you model and people will copy it. So yeah, people will follow not what you espouse, not the wonderful theory, but how you behave.
I love that. So name the behaviors you don't want to see. And
Sorry?
if I can just summarize, I think that's
Yes.
name the behaviors that you don't want to see.
Yes.
So people have a language for it and can start to create some self-awareness around it, and then model the behaviors that you do.
Yeah, so beautiful bit of listening and reflecting back there, Jamie. You didn't start with what I'm hearing is, but you did exactly what we've just been talking about. That was beautiful. Okay, we've got a few more minutes. Should we take, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 more questions or comments?
Sorry to barge in like this.
Oh, barge.
I'm struggling to actually raise a hand, and I've been like, you know, searching, etc. So bear with me.
Go for it.
A breakout that we had, you know, I shared that I find that I'm forever in pursuit of perfectionism, like, or perfect. You know, whenever I have to present anything or whatsoever, I always like, you know, seek the perfect,
Yes.
you know, presentation
Yes.
or the perfect
Yes.
setup or whatsoever. And it just remains an illusion. So thank you so much for sharing that, you know, it's okay to make mistakes. And you know, as long as you are not making the same mistakes over and
Yes.
over again,
Yes.
that's okay, make new mistakes and hit the lesson from the mistakes that you make. So
Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you, that, like, you know, in, you know, not so many words, you said it's okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. So thank you.
No, that's great, Leah. It's funny, it's a little thing, but actually it's a big thing, isn't it? Because if
It
you're
is.
so scared of going for it, I might make a mistake, I won't go for it. I mean, there was a company, I won't name names, it's a food company. And they said, can you come and give a talk? I said, why? Well, we're not very innovative. Why? Because it's not safe. And everyone turns to the senior managers for ideas. And the person talking to me was an HR person, said, I wish people at the lower level, they've got so many ideas, but they keep turning. Why do they do that? Because they're scared to make mistakes. Exactly the thing you're saying. So, you know, I said, you know, really, why does it matter in business terms? Because the competition are going ahead of us. So that little reframe is about having, in that case, a more competitive business, not a small thing, big thing. So thanks for that, Leah.
And I think I would also like to add that, you know, in my case, and I had Eugene in my breakout session.
Yep.
And she mentioned something, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that, one, with the history of South Africa, the terrible history of South Africa, you always want to put your best foot forward. You don't want to come across as that person who is looking for, a freebie or empowerment without like working hard, etc. So that's why I find that at times I obsess so much with the perfect environment, but yet it remains an illusion.
Yeah, no, that's very honest. Yeah, it's interesting, these dynamics.
There's a saying, Ron, if I may.
Yeah, mention.
Fulia, perfect is the enemy of good.
Yeah.
And what tends to often happen is that we strive for perfection, but it's usually unattainable. It's like the horizon that you can never reach. And so generally when you find yourself in that situation, just be good.
Yeah.
And the perfection will come with iteration and asking people for their opinion and asking people to contribute. You don't have to be perfect.
No.
So
right.
Thank you.
So when I employed people, I think it goes back to what's the culture you have in your business. When I employed people, I always said to them, you don't work for the company, you work for your CV. And when you came to the interview, you must probably have oversold yourself. Everyone does that, right? They go to the interview, and now you sit with the first thing that is a challenge that comes at you that you said you could do in your CV, but you can't do it here. If that person isn't encouraged to make new mistakes, they're going to hide that and under the carpet. And what you're effectively having when you have a mindset of perfection, you actually are putting yourself in a mindset of procrastination, because it's never good enough, and you slow the wheels down. So rather get it out there when you think you've done your best, and let the person coach you, guide you to make it even better because if their understanding is they will help me improve, they're not going to chastise me if I get it wrong. They will put it out there with what they think is the best. But I used to have another thing as well, is in my previous company, not Cash Crusaders, the one I was at before, it kind of you can get into what I call sloppiness, when people throw secondhand work or half-baked stuff at you because you're encouraging them to not procrastinate and just get it out there, and you can eventually have sloppy work coming at you. I used to, and people in this case, it was business proposals that they would give me, which I'd have to sign off and put the budget to. And what I would do is I'd leave it in my in tray until they came to me and said, hey, you haven't come back to me on my proposal. And then I'd pull it out my in tray and I'd go, oh, you mean this one? I haven't looked at it yet, but is this your work that you think is the best work you can do and I must read it? Or do you think that you want to give it another crack? And if it wasn't what they thought was good work and good enough to be in my desk, they'd take it back and they'd go and give it a second crack. And then they'd come back and say, okay.
Sean, great coaching. All you said was, I haven't looked at it. Is it your best work? I love it. What happened then?
Well, they would take it back if they didn't think it was good work, and they would give it another crack. And then when it came into my inbox, either through my email or in my in tray, I'd then read it because I know we'd had this conversation. Yes. And that is the best they can do.
Yes. Wonderful.
Great. Yeah. Karen, you have your hand up? Is it Karen or Karen?
Sorry, it's Karen. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, it's gone very faint from our side. But when I was in the breakout room with Leah, who just spoke to us about being a perfectionist, and I'm also a coach. I'm a coach, and I work a lot with the Enneagram. So I immediately said, have you done your Enneagram? Because I can see what you are. You're number one perfectionist.
Yes.
And she hasn't actually done the Enneagram. So. But I just said, thinking about what you shared, which I loved what you did today, and I loved how you used the model and then taught us through the model, like you actually brought it to life. So you filled in the color in the sort of outline. But with the Enneagram as well, so Leah will always be a number one, a perfectionist, but is she a healthy one? Is she the victim? Or is she the creator? Is she unhealthy? I mean, the healthy is the creator, the unhealthy, the victim.
Yes.
So I just sort of had that conversation, moving from being the just noticing and being aware when you are becoming unhealthy, and then using techniques and skills to bring you back to equilibrium to become the healthy version of yourself.
So Karen, I also love the Enneagram. I think it's tremendous. I think, I said, what's the big idea? And part of what I was saying is know where you are on the map. It might be the drama triangle map. It might be the Enneagram map. But when you start where you start, but developmentally, and I think what you're saying is, where do you need to shift to? So I think whatever device, and I think the Enneagram is a fabulous device, actually works very well with these ideas. It's to know where you are and where you need to, what's your next developmental step. So I love that. Yeah, great. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. I think I'm going to probably close it there if there's no more questions before we close.
So, yeah.
Nicole, go ahead.
If there are any other questions, I will be sending around a thank you email this afternoon, and also asking if you have any questions that you want to add. You're more than welcome to send those through and I can pass them on. Just from my side, from all of us at ORT SA CAPE JET, thank you for joining us this morning and for bringing your energy and your attention to the space. We hope that you are leaving with new insights and fresh thinking, and a lot of practical tools that you can apply straight away, whether it's in your business, in your team, or in your personal lives. A huge thank you to our speakers, Ron and Sean, for generously sharing your time with us this morning, your valuable experience. So thank you so much. And ORT JET, we have some really exciting events coming up. I'll just share those with you quickly. We have in mid-August, we have another impactful webinar. And later on in August, on the 27th, we will be having a panel discussion, which is a business talk with 4 dynamic women leaders on how to future-proof your business. Information will be shared later on this week. And in September, we're also launching what will be called the JET Breakfast Club, which will be a fresh way to connect, to learn, and to lead together with other entrepreneurs and business owners like yourselves. And please do follow us on social media and join our mailing list so you can stay in the loop of events that are coming up and some interesting information. And from my side, thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day and keep leading powerfully. Thank you. And Anton, if there was anything else that you wanted to end off with?
No, I think that was great. Thank you, Nicole. And obviously just thanks very much to Sean and Ron, who gave their time this morning, to all of you and to us as well as ORT JET. And yeah, just please do follow them as well. Hopefully some of you will be sufficiently intrigued to sign up for their masterclass. And then last comment from me is just that if you haven't checked out what we offer yet at ORT JET, there's access to things like free mentorship and a range of support tools for your business and for your entrepreneurial journey. So please do get in touch with us. We're always looking to support and help. And we will be bringing you more such talks of this nature. So I'm going to probably tap Sean and Ron again to give of their time and insights. They've got a range of talks that they give. And yeah, thanks everybody and have a fantastic day further.
And Sean and Ron, is there any last words that you want to share with us?
I was delighted. We don't always have a meaty Q&A session, but a lot of great questions and engagement and enthusiasm. So thank you back to the whole group. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I enjoyed like Ron says, we don't do this Q&A for long enough. And I think we need to bring more of that into our other talks because that's an insight. And I've just enjoyed how people interacted and how the content was relevant to them. And if anything, you know, if you can take one fact, my dad taught me this. He said, son, I want you to read books. I said, why, Dad? He says, because if you can take one fact out of a book that a guy took 10 years to write or research, you got that in 5 minutes. So Ron and I have done over decades. You can take and use in 5 minutes.
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Thanks for everything.
Cheers.
Cheers, folks. Cheers, folks. So